to the Drive to Thrive webinar series. We are so excited that you are here today. We are doing this series in order to provide business owners and entrepreneurs and really everyone in business today with access to different experts and thought leaders that will help them to thrive both in their businesses and in their lives as we are going through all these times of change.
Why are we doing this, Carrie, is a great question. Because we want to provide encouragement and practical tools that businesses and business owners can use right now. With the right mindset, we know that we can all together focus through the fears of our current situation and, more importantly, develop new strategies that are going to help us thrive now and into our new normal, whatever that looks like. So once again, as a reminder and another introduction of who we are, my name is Kyle Moss, and I am the founder of Experts Together. We are a life coaching and consulting practice that offers expert advice to help you and your organization become more clear on who you are on purpose and ultimately to add just a little bit more joy to your days.
Awesome. And hi, again, my name is Carrie Sawyer, and I am the founder of Diversity by Design. We help leaders to design inclusive environments where teams love to work. So we are super excited to jump into our topic today, which is all about juggling hats, how families are doing it all in COVID-19. And so really, we wanted to talk about this because like business as usual is not usual. We're in a completely unusual situation. And we want to find out from families and from business owners and from business people how they're managing their day in this completely new environment. And so we are going to be discussing that with two amazing guests today. And I would love to introduce our first guest. His name is Mathew Mitchel, and he is a strategic partner at Sidera Therapeutics, and he is a husband and a father. Mathew, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your work, your family. Tell us everything.
Oh my goodness, everything's a big tall order, but I'll give you a little snapshot. It's such a tickle to be here with both of you. This is super exciting. I'm glad you're doing it. So number one, as a worker in the world, I am the director of strategic partnerships at Sidera Therapeutics. We're a development stage pharmaceutical company in Sereno Valley here in San Diego. We have a phase 3 asset and then one that's kind of preclinical that we're working on. So that takes up kind of my 9 to 5 space, if there's such a thing anymore. And then I'm broadcasting to you here above my garage at home.
Awesome.
These COVID days, where I live with my wife of 15 years, my daughter Olivia, who's 13, my son Nathaniel, who is 7, my mother-in-law, and my sister-in-law, who has Down syndrome, is our kind of special person in our midst. So that makes for quite the frothy cauldron of coworkers.
Yes, it does. And we are going to definitely spend time talking about how you are managing all of that. So speaking of juggling hats, Kyle is actually our second amazing guest because she has a beautiful, amazing family also. And we wanted to get her insights and experience and expertise too. So Kyle, take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about your family and your situation as well.
Thank you for calling them beautiful and amazing.
They are.
And they are. They are wonderful. I also have a family at home. Not as many people, not as many bodies as Mathew has at home, but I have my husband, God bless him, who has to deal with me in this crazy time. And then I've got 2 young ones. So I have a 5-year-old daughter named Keegan and a 3-year-old son named Taj. And I should be really specific because Keegan would correct me. She's actually 5 3/4. So just be clear on that. So that's what and my husband's name is Tim. So if I reference that in the questions, just so that he's not confused. So.
Awesome. And Kyle, where are you right now?
Great question, Carrie. I'm actually, God bless my parents, they're still pretty young and they're really healthy and they live about a mile away. So I've been really blessed, and I think we'll talk about this a little bit, but to have their home to come to and to keep some semblance of normalcy in my kids' schedules, because every Wednesday they spend the day at grandma and grandpa's. So I am here at their house today. So if a child runs in the back here, don't mind them. I'm also in San Diego.
All right, very good. So thank you both for being here and for sharing your experiences and your families with us today on this webinar. And so we are going to jump right into the questions. And so we know that the environment that we work in has a huge impact on our day, our productivity, the things that we're getting done, our ability to focus. And so in this new environment, basically all of that is out the window because we have multiple ecosystems that have collided and are existing right behind or under you right now, depending upon where you are in your home. And so today we are going to be talking about that juggling of hats. You are remote workers, you are parents, you are cooks and cleaners and your teachers right now. And all of this is happening all at the same time. Before we could go to work and put on our work hat with few interruptions from the other parts of our lives, and now that's just not happening. And so today we're going to be just exploring some of the strategies that you're using, your experiences, the things that you've learned that can help other people who are in a similar situation, which is really everyone. So let's get into our very first question. And that is, I would love for both of you to paint a picture of what a normal COVID day is in your home. What's your family's routine? And Mathew, we're going to have you go first on this one. Normal COVID day. Go.
That's funny assumption there, that normal is a thing. So in my reality, it's currently spring break. The week before now was the first kind of distance learning attempt for our local school system. Mm-hmm. And then the 2 weeks prior to that was everyone just kind of tripping out and social distancing and what do we do? So there is no real normal, all right? So week by week and day by day, we've kind of improvised and figured it out. If there is a through line, it would be, before you enter our kitchen, there's a tall wall. Mm-hmm. And at some point, I ordered from Amazon some kind of self-stick chalk, kind of, I guess it's a chalkboard. And so on that now, I kind of have taken it upon myself to put the rudder in the water, if you will. And every morning I get up, I write, Wednesday, April 15th. And then hour by hour, I go down and I circle the hours where Daddy has calls. And then I put in expectations for Nathaniel and Olivia. I start with eat and play. Like noon is always where I start, eat and play. 8 o'clock is eat and, learn something in there, and then they get to play or do other things. So that's, and then dinner time and movie time. So everything kind of revolves around those key parts of the day. But what actually happens between 8 and noon, and then noon and like 5, your guess is as good as mine. We're making a directional attempt, and then the magic happens.
And
but
then
I will say that's been helpful.
That's great. Well, I mean, we're all inventing new tools at this time. And so does your wife also put her meetings or her blocks of like, I'm busy right now time?
Yes. So to give a little insight on that. So my wife works at an inpatient facility. So my wife's a spiritual counselor and does kind of intense one-on-one conversations from like 10 to 4 Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Okay.
So what that means is Daddy essentially becomes headmaster for the school on those 3 days in the middle of the week. And the knowledge is from 10 to 4, Mommy's out of pocket and we're going to be quiet in these areas of the house. And she'll pop out kind of hour by hour to say hi and like refill a beverage or something and high five and then go back. But generally she's unseen. So her schedule is known and solid for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Mm-hmm. Monday and Friday, it flexes a little bit. Daddy can kind of buy more time or find more time away to redistribute that balance. But yes, she's considered on that calendar every day. I still kind of write it down, but her presence comes and goes in more regular ways.
Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah. All right, Kyle, paint us the picture of your normal COVID.
So normal, every day. So it's funny, my kids go to a private school here, and so they were really awesome about jumping to the homeschooling right away. So I've heard that from other schools that it like took a little bit of time, but God bless our teachers and our staff. They had us like on it right away. So we got into the homeschooling for like 3 weeks, I want to say. And God bless my kids, they're only in kindergarten and preschool. So it's definitely not the same as Mathew, your kids who are in, it sounds like probably middle school or
one middle, one first grader, yeah.
Okay. So that helped us though to have some semblance again of normalcy, was going like, okay, the first week, no joke, my poor kids, I made them get in their school uniforms still.
You're not the first. Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
We pay for these things, so.
And it's routine.
Routine. And I think it really did. I know, like, I giggle, and it's silly, but I think that has kept some normalcy about our days and our time, is going, we still lay out our uniform. It's a school day. And I think it helps them kind of remember too, like, we're not just free play every day, right? We're still going to do some things. Like, we want to make sure we do our PE. So we've been looking up some things, and we didn't do the chalkboard, which I love that idea because it's much more visual. But we did sit together and decide on like a family schedule, and we laminated it. And by we, I mean me, because I love to laminate things. And we put it on the fridge so that we have like a Bible verse we're all learning together, and then our schedule, so that we know, like, we might not always do exactly what that schedule says, but it really helps keep it somewhat typical from hour to hour. And we can kind of always come back to like, okay, we got out of track. Like, what can we do to bring back some balance into this day? Like, let's look back at that schedule and see what could we do next. So that's kind of helped a normal day. But otherwise, it's really been the biggest thing I would say that we do almost nearly every day is make our beds. Like, we still get up and make our beds in the morning. Again, maybe because I'm a Nazi about it, fair, but it's really also kind of drawn the line of like, this day has begun and we've checked something off the list, and now we can like move forward with our day, right? And at least we've accomplished one thing, is making our bed. So I would say the normalcy has looked a little bit like that, as making our bed and then doing our best.
So yeah, it sounds like you both are relying on the semblance of a plan. Like, here is the plan, but if the plan goes off the rails, like, the plan is gonna morph. And so that seems like a strategy that is working so far for you. Is that kind of correct? Matthew's like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny as you're saying it, right? Because I'm also in the midst of contingency planning and strategery on my work front. So the opportunities to use your problem solving brain and your strategic thinking brain and your time management brain with these new people that you're trying to lead in various contexts, there's all sorts of, interconnectivity there. But yes, you try your best. That's such as life. We're going to head that way. Things are going to happen, and we're going to try our best once we get to those various wrinkles.
Yes. No, that's great. And that's actually a really great segue to our next question, because we have all of these skills and strengths that we use at work. And now we're at home working and doing these different things. And so I would love for both of you to share, what are the strengths and skills you find yourself relying most on as you are navigating your day, navigating through this pandemic and the experiences that it's creating? Kyle.
Your turn, Kyle.
Okay. That's a great question. And I was joking with Carrie and Mathew before that I knew these questions were coming. I should have had I would say, so what I do for the most part is I am a life coach, right? So I'm doing one-on-one conversations of like trying to like pave the way to a balanced life for my clients. And so a lot of that incorporates breath work and meditation. And so it's been really, really awesome to pull on those strengths within myself to go like, hey, this is my time to practice what I've been preaching for a really long time. So I would say a lot of that has come into like deep breaths and breath work that is a strength of mine, thank goodness. But even that has been put to the test. But it's been really helpful to take that from what I do with my clients and then help apply it to like my husband when I can, when he'll listen, and then my kids. So yeah, just, and also I would say, I don't know if maybe this is overly stroking my ego and I don't mean to, but the practice of grace, it's definitely not something I would say like I'm perfect at. I don't think anyone else is perfect at giving grace, but learning when and how to apply that in my work, in our schedule, in our relationships right now, like just being extra full of grace and like teaching my kids what that concept means has been something we've really relied on, is like, hey, we were talking about it before, like every day is a new day. Sometimes minute by minute, we have to start over, and we're going to give each other as much grace as possible. So I don't know if that's necessarily an inner strength or skill, but I feel like that's been a really big topic of our conversations as we kind of navigate each day.
Awesome. Thank you. Definitely. What
Yeah,
about you?
I resonate with so much of what you just said there. You know, as we were heading into COVID time, I had recently come across this guy, Brendan Burchard. He's kind of like a Tony Robbins 2.0 or something. He's this influencer guy, but he has super kind of practical mindset tools. And, you know, for someone in life coaching, I'm sure you're familiar with him too, but I've become a fan. And so the opportunity to kind of apply some of his thinking around uh, mindset stuff and bringing the joy and being a role model and like honoring the struggle, like those are little mantras I've been able to kind of infuse and put on the ground and help empower my daughter. Because what often happens here now is that, you know, I'm here with you all. Why it's Wednesday, my wife's in doing one-on-one calls. My daughter is downstairs, like being a role model for my 7-year-old and like doing her darndest to like keep the train on the tracks. And she's, whew, it makes me teary thinking about it. She's beautiful at doing that. And so the up close opportunities for us to weave these things that we believe in strongly into our family have been wonderful, actually. But if there's a strength that I would say is particularly mine, I do like organizing time and being able to, like that exercise of, you know, the way you put it was like make your bed and do your best. However you compartmentalize or create structure out of like this wild, undefined place that we're in and bucket it and make definitions. For me, it's been those times on the chalkboard exercise. And people read it and know where they're going. And I think that's been helpful.
Awesome. Thank you. So I want to drill in just to one thing that you mentioned, because I want to know more about it. Honoring the struggle. Talk a little bit more about what that means, because that like phrase, it resonates so much, and I don't even know what it means yet. So I want to hear more.
It's kind of, and I think I might have said it maybe before we jumped on the call or not, but the beautiful struggle, the reality that challenge is a fact of life and is in fact formative, helpful, like that growth mindset of like, you're going to do your best. You cannot figure it all out. So it feeds a lot into what Kyle was saying about grace. Like, how do you, a phrase we often use here is soft front, strong back. So how do you stay kind of confident and engaged, embodied and here present, but also receptive to what's going to happen that's not going to be planned, and able to kind of flex with that and go, oh, okay, I didn't plan on this, but here I am. And how do I receive what this is, this unexpected thing that maybe is not my preference, and trust that I'm only an idea away from the next right thing. You know, I'm it's possible to find our way through this, you know. So honoring the struggle, I think the way, and again, I'm kind of taking this directly from Brendan's language. The way that he phrases that is to, you know, do your best to make the plan, recognize it's not going to go that way. And when you come to that barrier, perceive it as a helper, you know, honor like, okay, this moment is actually hard. This kind of sucks. You know, I mean, I've had literal points in the day when I've set that schedule down and been in the thing and my wife's gone and I'm just like blink away from tears, like full on, like, this sucks. Like, this is not going. Like, I got work to do for real. Like, this roof is up because of the expectation, the things I'm supposed to deliver to this organization, and they are not being delivered right now. So, how to kind of breathe and blink your way through that. I mean, like, okay, and so I try to embody that and then say that to my daughter, like, I get it. This is not, there's going to be a variety of things today. They're not going to go the way you wanted them. Me too. Feel you, with you. And yet we're going to keep on going. So anyway, I could riff on that for a long time.
I love it. Well, it reminds me of something I have lived by for a long time. My grandma, who I adore, and I'm sure other people have said this and say it in different ways, but she always said, write your plans in pencil and give God the eraser.
Oh,
right?
look at that.
It's like, you can write it, you have to do the next thing, you have to plan, you have to move forward, right? Like, I also believe that clarity follows action, so it's like you have to take that action to become more and more clear. But I love but give God the eraser, because like you said, like, who knows what's coming next, right? You gotta have the plan in place, but you're probably going to erase most of it. So I think that's a really good one I've drawn on a lot as we navigate our days too.
Yeah, that's great. Those are, I mean, I've gotten some really great quotes from both of you so far. So thank you. Thank you for that. So I want to kind of drill into this a little bit more. And our next question is really around some of the difficulties. And we're definitely going to come out of the difficulties and talk about some positive aspects as well, but just so that people know that they're not alone. And I think that especially, like, we're being forced to be alone right now, but our experiences are still shared. And so I would love to hear an example from both of you of what is kind of one of the most difficult parts of this shelter in place, and then how are you and your family managing through it?
Are you pausing for me, Kyle?
No. I'm happy to jump in. I feel like anyone at this stage in the game can list off, like, this was hard, this is hard, this is really tough. This, like, there's a ton to choose from, almost like all of the difficulties, right? And there's the obvious ones of like being in the same place, and like you said, Mathew, like having work to do, but wanting to like really shepherd your kids in this time that's also terrifying, right? And going like, how do I balance those? Like, my kids always should win, but it's like, but I've got deliverables. So I think physically being in the same space, I was talking about how our house is set up. It's very echoey. So my husband is like trying to take a call while the kids are running around, and it's like he can hear all of that, but we're like on the first floor and he's on the third. And so just the managing of space has been really tough. But I would say one of the biggest ones that I've tried my hardest to think about every day is, how do I want my kids to think about the fear that's in the world right now, right? Like, they feed, and my kids are so young, so they're feeding off of whatever energy I'm putting into the household and the environment. And so the difficulty is, if I'm scared or if I think something's crazy or whatever it is, like, how do I help them translate that into their little minds appropriately, right? Because there's been a few examples where my daughter Keegan and again, she's 5 3/4. She has, said oh yeah, COVID, oh yeah, coronavirus, we can't do it. Like, right, her little mind is kind of coming up with this understanding of why we are living the way we're living and why we can't do things the way that we did them. And so I've really tried to watch, like, I don't want her operating out of a place of fear where, right, like, I don't know, like blaming the fear or whatever. Like, I want her to go like, this is happening and it's out of our control, but here's what is in our control, right? Making our bed, doing our meditation, like doing whatever we can to have our normalcy, and not just, I don't know, like just maybe navigating their own fear and anger has been an interesting challenge, right? Like, not letting my anxiety feed into how they're feeling about the situation at large. So, yeah.
Yeah, that relates for me. I think the way I translate that in terms of responsibility to hold a certain energetic, the challenge is, I think that, maybe I'll just speak for myself. I'm conscious of the ways I buffer my own experience, whether it's not sleeping like I ought to, eating a ton of carbs or sugars, or just checking out when I don't want to deal, And in this time with the people I'm with, that has clear impact. How often I'll pick my phone up or be looking at it or take it around with me. My daughter's 13, she's all about her device now. So it's asking my level of consciousness to tick up a little bit and my presence to tick up a little bit, because I'm up close with the people that I care the most about and have responsibility for. So it's kind of a gift and a curse. It's asking me to level up the game, whereas, maybe I'd be able to leave the house before, or have that another cup of coffee and get kind of amped and do some work and be in a different context and not with my kids and my wife. And it's okay. Here, managing energy throughout the day and kind of that consistency and showing up, without just like grazing on Easter candy and scrolling my, whatever wall, like, as much as I might be prone to do that, that's asked me to kind of reevaluate some of that stuff. And, the truth is too, and I'm super conscious of this and feel, grateful. Not everybody who is now quarantined is in a space where they feel supported and safe, right? So, this is scary for some folks. Like, they're with folks with whom they don't have great attachments and feel supported. So, I don't know. I find myself real grateful for some of that in my environment, and I try to kind of cultivate more and more of it, while being conscious of that gift. This is in many ways a gift for my family and my own behavior, but it's not true for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and definitely something for all of us to keep in mind as we're struggling. That saying, like, it can always be worse. And so we do have a lot of privileges and blessings that are around us that can help to pull us out of those difficult times, for sure, or the difficult feelings. And I think for me, one of the most difficult things is really just the inconsistency of like the day to day. Like, I can't remember if it was Kyle or Mathew, one of you, as you were talking about how things have progressed, like we had 2 weeks of crazy, and then we had like a week of like going into whatever, some kind of routine. And now we're in this week, right? And so every day you wake up and what is happening and how you react to it that day can be very different. Right. So some days you can't get anything done, and other days you have like a complete like brain spark and are super productive. And it's just kind of honoring your own cycle and the cycle of what's happening in your family. And I think it's really beautiful that both of you alluded to this, being aware of how your cycle is impacting the people around you and trying to manage that as best as you can, and making that being uplifting as often as you can. And of course, no one is perfect. That's not always going to happen. But just being aware is like really the first step to making sure that things aren't taking a dive in the wrong direction, or not being able to turn that around once you do notice that it is going that way. So honoring the cycles has been both a difficult thing, but then also a learning that we'll be able to take after this. Because one other thing that I realized is that life is happening like right now. A lot of people feel paused or are waiting or what have you, but like things that would happen in regular life that would throw you off your center are still happening in the midst of the pandemic. And so we're living in a pandemic and still having to manage all of these different things that are coming at us. And so how can we be aware of that space? And again, the grace comes back, giving ourselves the grace to be where we are, and then also keep pushing to be that positive influence and that positive role model in the spaces that we're in, because it is super close quarters. And especially, I mean, families and partners, everyone is absorbing everyone right now. So how can we be super aware of that and make that as good of experience as possible, as often as possible? So, but thank you both for sharing deeply on that. That was really insightful. Okay, so we're going to transition just a little bit and talk about some of the positive realizations and the unexpected blessings that have come out of these, 4 weeks of total crazy. What have you learned? What have you seen? What have you experienced that you're like, that I'm really glad that that happened. And without this environment, that may never have come into our life or into our realization or experience. What are some of the blessings that and the positivity that you've seen come out of this so far?
I know I can think of one huge one that I thought was so cool. A lot of times with kids, especially when they're younger, you kind of cap your expectations of them in some certain ways. And then you're like, whoa, they can do X, Y, Z, whatever it is. And because we've been a little bit more active, because we've been trying to get out as a family a lot more than we would have in the past, our kids accidentally, because we got a little not lost, I won't say, but we took a little bit of a longer hike than we meant to around our neighborhood. They actually completed it was about 5 miles. My 3-year-old walking the entire time. And it's funny because, right, like you just go like, oh, of course he can do that. Like, why wouldn't he be able to? Especially if we made it fun and whatnot. But it's just a really cool reminder that kids are really capable of a lot more than sometimes you think they are. Mm-hmm. And that same regard, my daughter's kindergarten teacher kept reminding us too, like, they know how to do this. Like, don't let them trick you. They're really, really able to do more than you think they are. So it's been really fun to watch and challenge her academically and say, like, no, you can. Our motto at home is we're made to do hard things. So, I have to remind my daughter that all the time. I'm like, hey, were we made to do easy things? No, like we were made to do hard, difficult things. And we're in the middle of it because that's how we get better. And so watching them do things that sometimes, like, I have my own little limiting belief of their ability, right? It's like, oh, that's such a great time to like have extra mind space or brain space to go like, wow, I think I was holding my kids back from taking these hikes that I thought they couldn't take, or maybe I was holding Keegan back from reading books that seem like above her level or whatever it is. And I'm like, no, okay, I now have time to go, let's do it. Let's try some really hard things. And, like, what else do we have to do? So we might as well try these things at a time where we've been given that extra little bit of time. So that's one thing that came to mind.
That's fantastic. That reminds me of like Glennon Doyle, Milton. I think that's where I first heard that we can do hard things. But I like the twist you made on we're designed to do hard things. Not that just it's possible, but we're literally built for it. I really like that a lot. I may borrow that one. Part of the like hidden benefit, of all this has been, well, one, just the obvious interconnectedness of the entire planet, for starters. Like, if you didn't kind of buy into our all in this togetherness part, because oftentimes things will happen in the world, crises or things, and then you can point to a bad guy or a bad country or a bad, thing and be like, well, that's their fault, and that you could kind of do that here. I know there's some folks that kind of get into that a little bit maybe, but it feels very, for me anyway, like an existential human moment of like, oh, we're all linked, we're all super human, in these basic ways. The kind of forced pause and shift from all the things you thought you needed to do to, shifting from being a human doing to a human literally being. I've sat in the backyard and like literally watched like my kid ride his bike like around the patio, like, like I never normally would be doing that. I'm sorry to say, maybe I should be, but so that kind of thing. I can't remember specifics, but I've definitely had more than one moment of sitting and relating to my kids as human beings and like just witnessing their own process and their own wonder and awe, or just their rationale about stuff, and been like, wow, that was super cool. I didn't know that about you, those kinds of things. And then too, just that, I think I was already talking about it a little bit, just the people leadership opportunity, of really having to practice what you preach, as you alluded to before, Kyle, and embody and step into what you say you're all about, with the people, you're closest to. Yeah, I think those are most of my kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool, yeah.
It's funny, my mom used to say, and we were raised in, the Christian faith, and still practice. She used to say, when you step out your door, that's when you're entering a mission field. But remember, like, the hardest people to love are the people you come home to, right? Like, and it's like, they're the easiest people to love, but also the hardest to, like we said, really practice becoming who we want to become rather than like doing. So I've thought a lot about that. Is like, this is the time where we're all given the chance to like really strengthen our family, because then when this is over, when our new normal emerges, right? Like, that's when we get to go out and be like the best example of who we've become to help all of those around us. So I've tried so hard to use that as a motivating factor. Like, there's nothing more important right now than being with my kid on the ground, like you said, or watching my kid ride a bike around or learn how to walk 5 miles, right? And have fun, whatever it is, because I know that these experiences are just going to make me a more empathetic and more helpful person, and a stronger family unit that can be more impactful as, like I said, our new normal emerges. So it's been a really, I don't know, again, it's like a blessing. And you're like, okay, every day you got to kind of fight through the difficulties to go, wait a minute, this is the time we get to take a deep breath. We may never have an opportunity like this again, right? So it's been motivating now, especially now this conversation. I'm like, oh, I got to keep myself in check even more.
Yeah.
It's funny, as you're coming, I'm conscious, Kyle, of how much God language and like blessing language you use. And, I'm a God person too. And we're having this conversation, I think 3 of us as folks that think of ourselves with a certain level of leadership and service desire. That's why we're on the call, right? We're kind of trying to offer strategies and thinking around a crisis moment. What do you say to people that are not faithy, or kind of like, because for me, it's actually hard to imagine sometimes, like take the dude angle. I get into thinking about the particular struggles of guys in the world, or people who identify that way. And, stereotypically, if you're out kind of focused, like Brad, go get the thing, do the thing, and then now you're in this situation where things are totally out of your control. You've lost all this control and you're trying to like, ooh, this is bigger than me in lots of ways. And I'm up against that realization that I can't control a lot of this and some of this is hard. What are your thoughts about that? I know, I'm sorry, I'm going into interview mode now.
No, that's totally fine. I love when people go rogue.
Also, I'm excited to hear my thoughts on that, to be quite honest. Yeah, no, faith is such an interesting thing. I think, well, because my belief is that we were all created in a divine image. Yeah. I think it's moments like this that people are able to tap into their unique spirituality. Yeah. And I hope that they're taking the opportunity to do that. And I think what I've been trying to do is encourage people through things like breath work, through meditation, because when you finally pause, again, that is scriptural to like be still, right? But when you do pause, I think your innate and natural divinity is what emerges. And it almost becomes your own guide. And maybe not, right? But I think when people truly stop, right? And again, we've got this opportunity to stop. They know where to go, right? Like, I think, again, if we were created in a divine image, the answers are there. When you truly do the self-reflection, I think as a parent, right? Like, your kids are like the best mirror ever of your behavior, your choices, all of that, like we've been talking about. Yeah, but I mean, I don't have a ton of like specific words for people. Like, have you been still, right? Like, have you looked around and tried the practice of gratitude just to kickstart your mind towards something that's positive to see where it leads you. Yeah, and I think we all interact with the divine very differently too. I think I believe in a God that is magical and mysterious because I don't want a God that I can understand. I want one that's so much bigger than my understanding. And to me, that means that, again, we were all created to find and meet him in our own ways. And so my encouragement to people is always, again, do the things you can to be still and to be quiet and figure out what that God looks like to you. So
one thing that I love about this question and what you said, Kyle, also is that you don't have to have any spirituality at all to do that. And we're kind of in an environment where you have to, like, things are slowing down. Like, you're going to have time where you're sitting there trying to figure out what to do. And that just trusting your inner self, whatever you call that, or call it nothing, those voices will start to emerge and point people in whatever direction they want to go. And they're listening to that inner divinity, right? So, or whatever they call it. You don't have to call it anything, and you still have access to it. And in a time like this, you were basically forced at some point, you're going to have that moment where you're just like, crap, what am I supposed to do now? And your own just like desire to thrive and desire to take steps will lead you to wherever you're supposed to go. It's super interesting, you know?
Yeah, what sang to me or stood out as you were both talking is this idea of, like, we've been forced to stop, but we get to listen, right? So that pivot from like, oh, to like, oh, okay, you know, and just making yourself receptive to then, okay, there's more here, you know, there's an opportunity here. What is it? And kind of, it probably is in line with that kind of honor the struggle thing. How do I just stay open enough to kind of get guidance on the next thing, you know? Anyway.
Yeah. No, that was a really great question. Thank you, Matthew. Okay, well, we are gonna, go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I was gonna say, I love Matthew. Are your kids Frozen fans?
Oh yeah, well, it's funny. But see, now we can riff on these. You're going to open up a can of worms now. If you're going to go further, you know, the second one, whoa, that was deep.
Well, and you keep saying the next right thing, and that's a song. I almost want to like read the lyrics because they did a beautiful job where she's down. Anna is down, and she's like, I have to do the next right thing. And so you keep saying that, it just reminds me. I'm like, thank you, Disney.
See, they're being led too. We're all being led. Okay, great. So for our last question, I just wanted to kind of end things on what advice can we give to family, to business people, business owners, just people who are just juggling all of these different hats, trying to create their routine, whatever that looks like, whether it's something more structured or flexing day by day. What advice would you give to people who are watching or just like, how can I thrive here? What can I do?
What I would say is I'm the dashboard. You know, you can't, you know, get to where you want to go if you don't know where you're trying to get. You know, so I like the dashboard visually, you know, for everybody to see. This is what we're up to. This is where we're going, you know.
Yeah.
If I had to give a tip or trick, that for me has been
for surviving a pandemic. Awesome.
I would say I've got two, and the one is like, keep going. Like, don't stay stuck. Keep going. We said it earlier, clarity follows action. Do the next right thing, right? One thing at a time, but just keep going. And sometimes going looks like being still. Sometimes going looks like pausing, right? But keep going. Like, just don't get stuck anywhere and allow yourself to sink into any of that. Especially as businesses, I think I've said this a lot, but this time is pregnant with possibility, and it's up to us to be creative and find out what that possibility is for you. And the second thing is, like, this is the time to try the practices that we've just talked about for so long. Try the things that you've always wanted to be. Like, who is it you want to be and you like never had time before? Do those things and start to learn how to incorporate them now so that they're already in your routine for when our new normal becomes the new normal. So keep going and become who you want to be now so that it's ready for you whenever we emerge.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you all noticed while that you were just giving your 1-2 punch there, that my daughter opened the door and I was trying to nonchalantly with my one finger point her like
I heard a knock and I was like,
I have to like go rewind and see if my countenance totally shifted into like daddy energy of like, not now.
Oh, that's good.
Actually win a prize. Whoever had someone burst into the scene was going to win a prize. And congratulations. You win. Awesome.
So, anyway, I like what you just said. Keep going and be who you want to be, right? Is that what you said? Thank you.
So good.
This has been awesome. I just want to thank both of you for just sharing, being vulnerable, like letting us know what your experience has been and what your hopes are, and just being here on this conversation today. And just thank you everyone also for tuning in and for watching. Big thank you, Mathew, as our special guest. Mathew, tell people where they can find you if they want to connect, if they want to talk more about anything they heard you talk about today.
Out there on the spaces, I guess the one that I'm using more is the gram. And so I'm Mathew with 1 T. But I really just use it to listen to D Nice do his like quarantine show. But I drop tidbits out there. You can check that out if you'd like to.
All right, awesome. Thank you. So you can find Mathew with 1 T on Instagram. Very good. We'll put all that up in the notes. So Kyle, Mathew, any last thoughts before we go? Anything to wrap up?
I like Kyle's bit. Keep going. Do the next right thing.
That was a combo. You kept saying do the right thing. So together, keep going and watch Frozen 2 and do the next right thing.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us for this Drive to Thrive webinar. We are going to continue to produce content throughout April and possibly May too, just to help support businesses and just the way that we're thinking and our whole life together right now during this pandemic. And we hope that you will join us again. We will definitely let you know when the next one will be happening. So thank you for being here.
Right. Thanks, you guys. Oh, and last thing, if you have a great idea for another topic that you would like to see discussed for business owners, again, or anyone else you think would be pertinent for Carrie and I to interview, then send us an email. You will see our email address and our contact information up here just now. We're looking for people also who want to share those insights. And again, that can help us successfully navigate through our work and our lives as we continue finding out what this new normal is emerging to be. So with that, thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time. All right, bye.